Communication is a core aspect of human life. There has likely never been a day in which you did not communicate. Even as a baby, we signal to our parents when we need something, such as food or shelter. Today, I'm going to discuss a few important aspects of communication to hopefully give you a better grasp on what communication is and how to communicate effectively. I'm going to tell you about how communication meets needs, how communication impacts ethics, and how language is powerful. There are four core types of needs that we can meet through communication. They are physical, instrumental, relational, and identity needs. Physical needs are things that keep our body and mind functioning. These can be things such as me saying that I'm hungry, a baby crying out to their parent, base level needs. But they can also be deeper, such as mental illness. Communication can help to alleviate symptoms of depression in some cases because it helps protect against isolationism. Instrumental needs are needed to achieve goals and to get things done. These are essential to cooperation and development. In order to create great things, we often need help. As the Beatles said, I get by with a little help from my friends. Relational needs are things that help us further our relationships. All relationships have a certain maintenance level, and communicating can help to, keep the relationship healthy, especially healthy communication. Identity needs are essentially our need to portray an identity through communication. So we use our words and actions to help to convey what we believe so that others will know what we're about. It is very important to keep in mind that your use of communication can be ethical or unethical. Ethics is a tricky topic because it's not usually black and white. It's just kind of a big gray area. But it is still important to strive to be as ethical as we can in our communication, even though it is difficult to discern what is ethical. One way we can achieve this is to be civil. Civility is adhering to the social or established norms. It is important to maintain this for respectful and thoughtful discourse. Some uncivil examples are name-calling, defensiveness, swearing, etc. This is unethical because it does not respect the other individual or what they're trying to communicate to you. This can happen on purpose or not, so we must always be on guard and make a conscious effort to remain civil in our discussion. Polarizing language is also unethical and ineffective. Polarization is basically running away from the midpoint, so the further you get away from the midpoint. So for example, someone who wants to ban guns is talking to someone who is pro-guns, and both sides might think that the other side is inherently wrong or evil, but in reality, there could be a middle ground if we kept an open mind and didn't polarize our language. So it's important not to polarize your language. Language is an extremely powerful tool in communication. It is ultra powerful for multiple reasons. It can express our identity, help us control, or even bind us. Our identity can be impacted heavily by words. Words can carry a negative or positive connotation depending on many factors. Who uses the word is one factor. So for example, queer people might refer to themselves as queer as a kind of reclaiming of the word. It's kind of a positive thing, like, oh, I'm queer. But some people will use queer as an insult, and they might derogatorily say, you're a queer. And so it's important to know that that can change. The power of the word is in who says it, how it's used, the connotations. Language also affects our credibility, which is an aspect of identity, as I talked about earlier. So we must communicate clearly to be perceived as kind of well put together and worth listening to. We try to be well spoken, clear to the point, conclude our ideas, support our claims, and this can help to have people listen to you, especially in professional settings. It's not as needed in informal settings. Language can also help us control people. Now, control isn't necessarily a negative thing, although it may sound like it. You can just say, hey, can you do this for me? And people might listen or they might not. You can make demands, and it's important to control them. So for example, parents with their kids, they might say, hey, you need to do this. And then when they do it, they can, use language to control by praising them, and that will reward the behavior and make it more likely to happen again. Words can even bind us. So, for example, in marriage, just the simple words "I do" bind you together legally for the rest of your life, unless obviously you get divorced. So language can even bind us legally together, and that's a really powerful thing, and the strength of language cannot be overstated. So in conclusion, communication helps us to meet our needs, and it impacts ethics. Language, a common aspect of communication, is extremely powerful and cannot be overstated. You may ask why I chose to talk to you about these things. Why is this important? It is important because the way we communicate shapes how others perceive us. I always thought it was funny how there's 1,000 different versions of me running around in people's heads depending on what they've seen me say and what they've seen me do, because that's the limited knowledge that they have of my person. And this is why it's so important to communicate effectively, in my opinion, because the way you communicate is the way that they know you. That's the only part of you that they know. They don't know what's in your head. So if you want to be perceived as a good person and you want to be trustworthy and loyal and you want people to know that, you have to communicate this. It is vital that you portray the best form of yourself through communication.